guys, welcome back to Strong Successful Male. So for today, I'm going to go over this great email that was sent from a subscriber. This from a guy, he's 36 years old, he's from Africa, I believe South Africa. He doesn't say so, but I'm kind of trying to read between the lines here. And he shares his story about how he ultimately has the last laugh when his marriage came to an end and he divorced his wife because she was cheating with a so-called friend. And you're going to see this guy in his story, although he comes out on top, definitely went through a lot of hardships earlier in life. He met her when she was 18 and he was 18. And in the beginning, she was the perfect girlfriend on all fronts. And then when a major hardship came upon his life, she was there for him. And so he thought after all that, she'd be good marriage material. And lo and behold, they have a kid, and it's not long before suspicious activity started happening. And that'll be a very good one to show you guys how, again, you could think you know your girl. She could be amazing on all fronts, all the checks and the checklist checked, support you during tough times. But little do you know, that's not her real character. There can be things going on behind the scenes, and you really, really have to do your homework. And or just like that, they can change on you. And of course, it's all your fault. And you have to stay strong and persevere and truly stick with the people that you know have your back, which are typically good family members or friends. And how a guy can go through absolute hell, but he can come out on top. And I might add, always, in a situation of a divorce, hire a darn good attorney and listen to your lawyer. And you're going to see here in this guy's story, he definitely has the last laugh. And I might add, now, all these years later, he is kicking butt in life. Great son, and his wife, not so much. He says, hi SSM. I found your channel a year ago, and I can't stop listening to your stuff. It's like I'm addicted to it. First, thanks a lot for all the work that you do. The info you share is important for today's world. I've been thinking about sharing my story. Maybe it can help someone who needs to hear it. And since I'm from Africa, it just proves that what you say is that people are the same everywhere. Yes, guys, understand that. Wherever you live, your culture, your religion, socioeconomic background, people are the same. End of story. Men do what men do, women do what they do. That's why this applies everywhere. I'm a 36-year-old guy. My parents split when I was 10 years old. My dad was there, but not as much as he could have been. My mom, who sadly passed away recently, did her best to raise me and my two sisters. I was the only male in the house, and to make it worse, I'm the youngest. So it's just you in the hen house, and obviously all that feminine energy rubbed off on you early on. My high school years were all about what my sister calls girlfriend retention. I didn't really take relationships seriously. My focus was doing well in my studies and sports. Well, good for you. My indifferent attitude towards girls meant I got a lot of attention. And being 6'2", blonde with blue eyes, and having an athletic build from playing rugby didn't hurt as well. Yeah, dude, you were a born Chad. Tall, built, played rugby. That's a tough sport. Blonde, yeah, no problem. I met my ex-wife, let's call her Jessica, just because you like that name. I don't like that name. It's just that every gal that's nuts or a pain in the ass or whatever that I've encountered throughout life, his name is Jessica. I'm sure there's some Jessicas that aren't crazy, but every single one I've met throughout my entire life was mental. I met her when I was 18. Back then I was studying for an IT qualification during the day and working as a barman at a popular nightclub at night. The legal drinking age here is 18. Jessica was a friend of the girl I was dating at the time. I didn't pay much attention to Jessica because I hate cheating, but I couldn't help but notice what a stunner she was. Nothing wrong in appreciating beauty when you see it. I got no problem window shopping. It's just when you go into the store to buy that item, when it's probably a problem, bad idea. About 3 weeks later, I ended things with my then girlfriend. A week after that, Jessica texted me, concerned about how I was doing. Yeah, I'm sure she was just so concerned about your well-being. A red flag for sure, but me being Mr. Indifferent, I thought, why not? After assuring her I was more than okay, we started texting, and what began as politeness quickly turned into flirting, leading to us planning a date. He says, you were right, frenemies is a better way to describe their friendship. Anyway, this Jessica chick who became your future wife, she was friends with the girlfriend that you broke up with, and now she's right after you. So much for loyalty. Her friend, my ex, eventually found out about what was happening between me and Jessica and confronted me. She accused me of cheating on her, called Jessica some delightful names, and warned me that Jessica would cheat on me one day, and that I would regret it. I didn't take it seriously for two reasons. First, I wasn't planning on a relationship with Jessica, so who cares? And second, I figured the ex was bitter about how things turned out. There was no use in trying to convince her otherwise, that we only started chatting after the breakup. So I left it as is. Jessica could defend herself if she wanted, but she chose not to, as it would have been nothing but a waste of time. We weren't worried about what others might think either. Well, if you're being honest here, you weren't cheating on the girl. You guys broke up, and then Jessica swooped in, as Jessicas do, and she roped you in with her beauty and obviously some of the crazy. What happened next? You guessed it. It's a story as old as time. I lost my ability to think when things got physical. Dude, it's not like you hadn't gotten laid before, but those crazy girls, there's something about them, and obviously this is probably your first crazy chick in the sack. This girl was absolutely stunning, was mine. Never yours. She's a rental. Until some other dude rents her. It says here, left or right cheek for the smack SSM. I know she was never mine, it was only my turn. What made it worse? Younger foolish me never stood a chance. She was friendly, helpful, made me laugh, and even went so far as making me sandwiches late at night when I was hungry. Looking back now, I can only wonder if she wasn't working with a plan. Who am I kidding? She was. Of course she was. The first 3 months, we spent a lot of time getting to know each other, hanging out with friends, and going out often. She thought it was time for me to meet her family, and I agreed. Some background on her family. She's the youngest with 3 older brothers. In other words, she's treated like a princess. Her mom passed away when she was a teen. Her dad remarried to a woman with 3 kids of her own. 2 sons and a daughter the same age as Jessica. Let's call her Mary. Mary will play a role in the story later, but let's focus on her brothers and dad first. As Jessica is the youngest, her brothers were very protective. Being older than me, they did the typical brother thing and put me through the test. Despite being younger, I wasn't easily intimidated. Well, if you're a 6'2" and your prime rugby player, physically in your prime rugby player, I'm sure you're not intimidated. It didn't take long for me to earn the respect almost effortlessly, and we became close. Unfortunately, one of her brothers passed away years later, always considered me as his brother. I had no issues with him whatsoever, or with both of them. Her dad, however, gave me a different vibe. For some reason, I felt like I couldn't completely trust him. There was just something about him that he had me giving my guard up, keeping my guard up. My gut feeling would be justified years later. Nevertheless, I respected him as her dad, was always friendly, open, and very respectful towards him. You're always respectful to elders, guys, and obviously the parents of who you're dating, until they are being disrespectful to you, then you need to stand up for yourself. And if it means that you lose the girl, you lose the girl. Otherwise, they won't respect you and she won't respect you. After meeting and spending time with her family, it was time to introduce her to mine. I arranged for us to visit my mom for a weekend. Surprisingly, my mom and sisters liked her. It was a first because they never really liked the strays I brought home. Their words, not mine. They approved of Jessica. They were generally happy for me. Since her mother had passed away years ago, my mom eventually started seeing her as her own daughter. So your mom and your sisters really took her in, especially your mom. Well, I know what happens down the road when you with your mom and her once she crosses things with you. I finished my qualification and Jessica finished high school. Even though Jessica and I are the same age, I finished school a year earlier because I skipped a grade, giving me a head start that I was determined to make the most of it. Good for you, bro. By the time I turned 19, I landed a steady job in my field of study. It took just 3 months for me to be promoted to regional manager, resulting in a decent salary increase, good enough for that time, but not quite where I aimed to be. Dude, that's amazing at such a young age, but clearly you're smart, you know your shit, you go for things, you make the most of your situation. That's awesome. Jessica decided to skip further education and start looking for a job. Finding work where we live was tough at the time. Now it's almost impossible. So it took some time before she could secure employment. Well, she's young, for goodness sake. And what real experience and skill does she have? You know? About 4 months into my new role as manager, the owner of the company crossed the line and decided to walk out. It was either that or risk getting into legal trouble. I've always been a bit of a hothead, but for an older man to criticize my parents' upbringing just because I refused to assist him in his questionable business activities, walking away was the right choice. A few months later, I learned that the business closed down due to a police investigation. I never found out the details, but I could only imagine what was really happening there. Dude, take your pick. It could be a whole bunch of things. Luckily, it didn't take much time for me to find another job. This time, it was at a large, well-known business, one of the biggest in the country. The only problem was that it wasn't in the field I studied. However, I made the best of it and taught myself everything I needed to know to grow in this field. Right there, guys, you hear that? New job, he doesn't know shit about it. He did everything he could to learn how to grow, how to be successful, how to move up. Taking action. Making something of yourself. Always on the rise. That's what you got to do, guys, to be successful in this world in anything. The salary was almost double what I was making in my previous job, and at 19 years old, who could say no? Sweet, bro. You go for things, and that sets you apart from so many people in this world. I thought I could use this position as a stepping stone to apply to the company's IT department in the future. Spoiler alert, I never did. I became an expert in this field. Meanwhile, Jessica had some luck with temporary jobs, but struggled to find full-time employment. Well, interesting she's struggling while you're thriving. And what a perfect time to stay with you and latch on to you, huh? I didn't support or pay her bills yet. She was still living at home, and we hadn't moved in together yet. However, I did spend some money on her. Before you smack me too hard, I hope this might negate it. I didn't spend everything on her. In fact, during those days, I invested most of my salary to establish a solid investment. Very smart, bro. And by the way, smack for spending a bunch of money on her. I don't mind spending, if you're together for a long time and she's a good girlfriend, occasional gift, occasional. But obviously, if you're spending money on doing things you enjoy, so be it. But if you're one of these guys that's paying for all her shit, big mistake, which you clearly weren't. And good for you having the good sense to also take your excess cash and start investing early on, which all guys should do. I invested most of my salary to establish a solid investment. To this day, I haven't skipped a monthly contribution towards my investments. The total monthly contribution might have changed over the years, but the consistency of the payment itself has remained. At least something I got right amid all my blue pill ways. Start young, guys. Start young. Even if it's $50 a month, it's something. One night, while driving home from work, I noticed difficulty seeing well in the dark. Initially, I didn't think much of it, attributing to tiredness, so I shrugged it off. When the issue persisted, I decided to visit an optometrist to get it checked out. To keep it brief and avoid too many details, the test results raised concerns for the optometrist, who referred me to an eye specialist. The eye specialist in turn referred to me to a neurologist, revealing a growth on my brain. Holy shit. And this is a young guy on the rise, making something of himself, and this shit happens? The neurologist sent me to a neurosurgeon to have it removed, but unfortunately by that time, the damage was already done. My optic nerves were severely damaged, and within 4 months from the doctor's visit, I became legally blind, losing my sight completely. Bro, I'm sorry that happened, but watch this, guys. This guy finds a way, perseveres anyway. Guys, we're all going to go through hardships in life, and it ain't fair, it ain't right, and it usually happens to good people. But you got to find a way, and this guy does. As you can imagine, a young guy who seemed to have it all, career, great relationship, and promising future, lost everything in the blink of an eye. I had no career, and uncertainty loomed over my future. The only constants were my family and, of course, Jessica. She didn't abandon me. In fact, she went above and beyond to help me through it. She provided support and assistance whenever I needed it, just to name a few ways. I have to give it to her. She was truly the model girlfriend at the time. Well, that's great at the time, but I know how this story ends, which goes to show you they can be great in the beginning for a few years and then just like, boom, turn on you. I'm not putting her on a pedestal, but credit is due where it's earned. When most would have left, she stayed and put up with my mood swings. After feeling down for a few months and gaining a lot of weight, I woke up one day and decided I didn't want this kind of life. I started looking into things and learning new skills to be more independent. I got a cell phone with special software for people with vision issues. Back then, you had to either buy a specific phone or get specific software for a compatible phone. I also got computer software and taught myself how to use it. Again, you're faced with adversity, but you're finding a way. And this is the difference between guys like this and a lot of people that would just give up in life. And it's understandable that you were obviously mood swings and depressed and gained a lot of weight. Who wouldn't? But finally, one day you said, enough of this shit. I'm going to do the best I can with what I have, and you did. And by the way, at such a young age, that's awesome. I went for training on basic stuff like using a white cane and cooking. Gradually, I started becoming more independent, and that made me feel a lot better about life, which in turn improved my mood dramatically. I no longer felt like I had no value or worth. Not long afterwards, the manager I reported to called me. He asked me to come in for a meeting, and though I didn't know what it was about, I was curious, so I accepted. They offered me my old position back and promised to arrange and pay for the necessary training, covering everything from accessibility software to mobility. Bro, that's awesome. You must have made one hell of a good impression. I found myself back at work and doing what I used to do. But this time with a difference. I had the added motivation of proving to everyone that despite society's perceptions, you should never underestimate a person with visual disability. Soon enough, I earned the nickname Machine because sighted people couldn't keep up with my productivity. I broke records and set new standards in everything I did. Again, bro, where there's a will, there's a way. You made shit happen, and you were determined to prove all the naysayers wrong. There's nothing motivates me and pushes me harder than proving others wrong. And essentially saying F you, because growing up, I had a lot of people say, I couldn't do this, couldn't do that. And the negative reinforcement worked. It's how it is, A lot of people respond to positive reinforcement, and there are others that respond to negative reinforcement. And there's no greater satisfaction, or a few I can think of, than have an asshole say you can't do something or talk down to you and make them eat their fucking words. Anyway, while I did have limitations, not like not driving, well I could, but it doesn't seem like a good idea, I still had my hands and my brain. The mindset motivated me to learn new skills, such as woodworking, which I developed a deep love for. I also started helping others who lost their sight later in life by serving as a mentor. That's sweet. Give something back. Good for you, man. Showing others that it can be done. People need that. With my life back on track, my relationship with Jessica went from good to great. She found a job and started working again. She became quick friends with a woman, Mandy, at work. Uh-oh. Jessica and Mandy decided to introduce me to Mandy's husband, George, hoping we would all get along and start hanging out together. Initially, I wasn't a fan of George's arrogance, but I gradually got used to it. He became a good friend who would drop everything if you needed him without even asking. He just knew and showed up ready and willing to help. Okay. I've had some people in my life I've known that initially I thought were obnoxious or pain in the ass, but then even though there are things that I want to smack them upside the head about, they can be extremely loyal, would do anything for you. So that guy's he's got a big mouth, but you know what, he's loyal. We spent a lot of time together as couples or just the guys or girls when we needed some quality time. Around this time, Jessica's stepsister Mary met her future husband, and soon after we got the news that Mary was pregnant. This didn't sit well with Jessica, as she wanted to be the first to be pregnant, and she started pressuring me for a baby. What I tell you about girls in competition, usually it's about the mid-20s when a lot of them, their friends are getting married or having kids, and all of a sudden they're rushing to the altar and pressuring their boyfriends. I helped Firm explain that having grown up in a divorced home, I didn't want the same for my future kids. I wanted to get married first and have kids when the time was right. We were not ready for marriage yet, so she had to wait. Good for you. She accepted this, but I knew it bothered her. She understood that when I made up my mind on something as crucial as marriage and kids, I would not change it. Good, don't back down. Mean what you say what you mean. Otherwise, people aren't going to respect you guys. In our 5th year together, I took the next step and proposed to Jessica. Smack! So you were 23? You were doing so good up to this point. Now, if you would have waited 5 years, okay, but still. I know I was way too young, no excuses, no buts for me. Not surprisingly, she said yes. We decided to get our own place and moved in together before getting married. Very smart. Final test. For her, it was a way to get out of her dad's house, and for me, it was to see if we could live together without wanting to kill each other before tying the knot. We had our small arguments, but nothing that set off warning lights. So we got married 2 years later, completing a total of 7 years together by then. Okay, you know, 7 years, and you did the 2 years of living together. I would have waited till maybe you're 28, 29, but, okay. At least you get this shit over with in terms of what I know is going to happen next. A year after our wedding, Jessica became pregnant. Shocker. And 9 months later, my son was born. I thought I had it all. The loving wife, the son, the bright future, and the best friend, George. We even had 2 dogs. how wrong I was. So wrong that I could only laugh about it now. You can say SSM, I know you want to. I really wish I wasn't right all the time, guys, because if I wasn't right all the time, the world would be less fucked up, and there'd be a lot less unhappy guys out there that went through these types of things. Unfortunately, well, human nature is what it is, and the times are the times. The argument started a month after my son was born. It seemed that George would use any excuse to come by our place alone. Remember, George is the boyfriend of Jessica's BFF. At first, I figured he was just being himself, smack, but I soon started noticing that some changes in his attitude towards me. It went from being a friend to arrogance. I asked Jessica if she noticed it, but naturally she said no. I am imagining things. I left it, but something just didn't feel right about it, and I couldn't just let it go. If your gut is telling you something, guys, you gotta listen to it. This George character, who again, he said was arrogant, but he proved to be alright for a while. Now he's there all the time, showing up at your house. I'm guessing when you're not there. Not cool. I kept my guard up and didn't act on anything. I sincerely hoped that I was wrong and it would work itself out. Smack! Nope. That's just going to allow them to do what they do. You know, you have to nip it in the bud. Say, hey, bro, you're not coming over here when I'm not there. And also some distance and boundaries. I'm a father now. You got your girlfriend. End of fucking story. And the same thing, drawing boundaries with her. One morning, Jessica was very ill. George showed up like the magician he is and offered to take the day off to take care of her so I don't have to worry about her at work. No, George, you can get your fat ass out of here and worry about your own girlfriend. It's my wife, my family, I take care of it. If I didn't suspect anything, no self-respecting husband would say yes to something like that. I was a husband and father of a child, and in my opinion, it was my responsibility. So I politely declined. It didn't take 30 minutes for Jessica to be better and in a bad mood for me not going to work that day. Oh, imagine that. Miraculous recovery now. Here I have to say, I honestly didn't want to believe what I knew already. I simply didn't want to. After everything that happened, this had to happen as well. What I couldn't understand was that she stood by me all the way through everything. When times were good, excellent. In fact, how could she do that to me? I was in denial and figured that if I just kept pushing back, it would all work out itself. And he says, yes, SSM smack. Bro, you've been through so much, I'm not going to smack you as much. And everybody's going to be disappointed here, but you were with her for 7 years. That's a long time to figure out somebody's character. And you lived with her for 2. And she was with you, give her credit, during the very tough times. But something changed, as it can like that, because women have an emotion-based CPU. And it just boom, and that's going to rewire the whole system to go on a different path because of the emotions for George. But bro, and I'm glad you checked him on that thing. No, you're not coming to her. My wife is sick, and all that. But about 3 weeks later, I fell asleep on the couch one night with my cell phone on my chest, listening to a rugby game. Next morning, my phone was gone. I looked everywhere but couldn't find it. I asked Jessica if she saw it, but even after a half-hearted search, she couldn't find it either. It seemed like somebody stole my cell phone. Now here's the confusing part. We lived in a very safe place with 2 layers of security. I had 2 dogs, and they're known for barking at the smallest sounds. But last night, he didn't bark at all. If someone had come in, he would have made some noise. So it didn't make sense that someone stole my phone while I was asleep. I called my dad, and he took me to the police station to report the theft, which was necessary for the insurance claim since it was an expensive iPhone. On the way, my dad noticed something was wrong and asked me. I shared my suspicions about Jessica possibly taking it, and he found it hard to believe. Yeah, he doesn't want to believe that Jessica, who's been so great all this time, to your knowledge, would do something like this. We decided the best thing for me was to tell the cops that Jessica, who can see, couldn't find the phone after I realized it was missing and report it stolen. This wasn't a lie, but it helped me in the case that there were issues with the insurance and any untrue statements she might make. On our way home, we stopped at the hardware store to change the locks. That's when another thought struck me. George, who lived in the same estate, could easily pass through security without any issues. The dogs knew him, so they wouldn't have barked either. To this day, I still don't know who took my cell phone that night, but what I do know, and what I realized then, is that it had to be one of them. There was simply no other explanation. My guess is that they did it to find evidence of anything that could prove wrongdoing on my part, maybe to feel better about their affair. Regardless what they found, it would have made a difference in a divorce case. Sadly, she could have just asked for, or taken my phone. I had no passwords on it, and I never had any issues with her doing it. She always answered it when somebody called, and if I couldn't because I was busy. I had nothing to hide. I was faithful, and I didn't chat with any females at all, considering it wrong as a married man. Good for you. Very old school. If you're not hanging out with or chatting or texting or whatever other women, she should be with other guys. Clearly, she missed the memo on that one. But yeah, obviously something's going on. And there could have been things you could have done, but at the end of the day, the past is the past. But I know you redeem yourself. So all they could have found were messages with family, male friends, work colleagues about work matters, and the usual spam messages I received. I lost a phone that gave them nothing to work with whatsoever. The good news is the insurance claim went through, and then 2 weeks later I got a new phone, a better one, but the hassle it caused was enough to get my blood boiling. When my dad and I got home, we found George sitting with Jessica on the couch, having a good time. Define having a good time. Sitting there watching a show and laughing, playing video games, or making out. I'm guessing not making out, but obviously a little too friendly. And of course she's there. Like, get the fuck out of my house, asshole. And by the way, wife, this bullshit's going to end or I'm fucking out of here. But remember, he also has a newborn. My dad made some comments to show he wasn't happy, and my face showed I was really annoyed. While George was still there, we changed the locks. After we finished, my dad loudly said he'll be coming back later to check if the trash had been taken out, clearly hinting at George leaving. He did, but only after an hour after my dad left. As I'm writing this, I can't help but wonder how many smacks I've already received from you, SSM. You've gotten some, but not as much as others. The younger version of me was a fool, but it only gets worse. I had a gut feeling something was wrong, that I was being cheated on, but like many men out there, I didn't want to admit it. On top of that, I convinced myself that my success in life was not only measured by financial independence and my career, but also by my family. I took pride in being a husband and a new dad, and I took my responsibilities to provide and protect seriously. Again, you're an old school kind of guy. And again, the crazy thing is that as you are claiming here in the story, first 7 years, she was a great loyal girlfriend. All the stars were aligned, especially when you know, after the problems with your eyes and everything like that. But just like that. So either she really did change because her emotions for George, or there was shit going on behind the scenes. And sadly, one has to question that. And that's great you took pride in your family and your boy and all that, but that causes people to just, ignore red flags or not act upon things when they have to. And they gotta. You have to, gentlemen. I know how this all sounds, believe me, but I'm disgusted by the person. I messed apart. He says, I had this idea stuck in my head that I had to justify my existence. The need to prove myself worthy drove me to become what everyone hates, a people-pleasing nice guy. I hardly ever said no to anyone, always trying to show my worth. It felt like I had to prove my value to everyone. I know how that sounds now, and believe me, I'm disgusted by the person I was back then. Smack! Guys, you don't have to prove shit to anybody. All right? And yeah, those guys that do that all the time, that have to prove themselves, they're annoying as fuck. Nobody wants to be around an ass kisser or a guy trying to do these types of things. You didn't have to do shit, dude. You were an amazing young guy. You just, in this situation, we're handling it not the best. But you were also young. And I know you know now. I'm sharing this not to excuse myself or give reasons for being the coward I was, but in the hopes that if you turn my story into a video sometime out there, there's another man who needs to hear this. If I can help just one person, I'll gladly accept looking like the coward I was back then. Well, bro, every story helps somebody around the world, and it's all right. You made mistakes, you were young. But I know how this story's going to end. I stayed, just like you expect from a weak man. I knew she was cheating on me, and it hurt even more because it was with my supposed best friend. Smack! If you were so convinced that she was cheating, you should have talked to a lawyer, done everything you could to figure out your situation, and ended it. Because when women know that guys aren't happy with the way they're behaving but still stay in it anyway, they resent that weakness. And then they do more bullshit. But luckily, it didn't last long. A week later, George told me he was getting a divorce. Wanted to break the news himself. Oh, how interesting. When he's getting close with your girl, George is getting a divorce. I knew it was only a matter of time before I'd have to do the same, and I was right. A few days later, while I was at work, I got an email from Jessica asking for a divorce. There you go. Big surprise. George getting divorced. Now Jessica's emailing you, not saying in person, emailing you, asking about a divorce. Well, I'm sure your heart was ripped out on so many fronts. That was also the moment, as hard as it can be, imagine, things are going to turn around for you. Now, guys, this has gotten to be pretty long, so I'm going to end it here on part 1 of this cliffhanger. Stop yelling at me. And I'll do part 2 in a couple hours with the situation with his divorce, her, and our guy coming out strong just like I promised. See you then.